and I'm really out of my element. So I'm a political theorist. I don't have like any formal training in film or cinema. I did have some great media studies teachers as an undergrad at Trinity, but I'm not going to be as expert in this way uh, as others on this panel, which you might be able to tell from the fact that I'm talking about David Lynch, and this is supposed to be about cinema, and this is a TV show, but it's cinematic. I decided, okay, it'll work because it's cinematic. And I was thinking about how Pippin says that Nor characters, they can't fully explain themselves. They can't fully explain their actions. And I think that this comes out strongly through Lynch's eye. Now, specifically what I want to talk about is Twin Peaks as a story. So all the parts of the story are something that are under my consideration. Oh, that's my dog. And then I would say that it sounds strange, but I want to talk about this text and sexual abuse and nuclear technology and nuclear warfare. I think that these things are linked in a really central way for Lynch, and I think there's a lot to be drawn from it philosophically and politically. So, spoilers, Leland, Laura's father, he has been sexually abusing her for years. And Laura, of course, the original Twin Peaks begins with her death, and it's devastating to the community. And she seems to be the perfect girl from the perfect family, and to have made so many people's lives happier and better, and on the surface kind of have a fairy tale life in persona. But you find out as time goes on that behind the scenes she's been sexually abused by her father the whole time, while he's possessed by the arch villain of the text, the entity killer Bob. And Bob is always referred to as B.O.B., like, and most of the time I've seen it in text, it's capitalized. Now, we find out in the second contribution of Lynch that Laura thought her father and Bob were different, but in reality, they were the same. I think that this is one of there's a lot of noir tributes, like in the cinematography and the writing and the characterization, but even in this sort of way in which she doesn't really put together for a while what is actually happening to her, which is true, generally speaking, for sexual abuse. A lot of times when you talk to survivors of childhood sexual abuse or incest, they don't fully understand what happens to them until they grow enough to be able to and get requisite knowledge. Similarly, if we're thinking about the Trinity test, which is where we're testing out the nuclear bomb, and Lynch uses the Trinity test in an important way. A lot of the people who lived in the sort of horizon of the blast ended up developing cancer and other medical complications because of this experiment, which they knew nothing about, right? Another similarity with noir, in Pippin's account, is that Laura does seem to know what's happening in some way, and the abuse that's happening in some way, but she's also not able to speak about it. And there's kind of this way in which the whole town operates that way. It has all of these secrets and all these things it doesn't name, right, that you find out as you keep going. So on the outside is this polite exterior, but behind the scenes is what they don't name, which turns out to be like a prostitution ring and pornography, adultery, physical abuse, all of these different kinds of things. Um, there's an Americana overlay on the exploitation of Laura and on the different forms of exploitation that are happening inside the town, inside Twin Peaks. And I don't know if you guys saw the recent CPAC article on The Atlantic, but there's this really Lynchian photo of a girl who is a very slight blonde, and she's trying to take her like influencer picture and has like a little camera tripod set up. And then there's like a bar next to her, and there's all this black space. And it's really Lynchian and really kind of unsettling. And I kind of think that he captures, and this story captures, something that's at the core of his insights about America, but also about abuse and about the nukes. So in this story, the father's the monster in the house, but he's a product himself of intergenerational trauma. But he's also someone who, while the product of intergenerational trauma, can't cycle break. And so there could be a lot that you could say about that politically, just in terms of the formation of citizens and the idea of the leader in a country, the father of the house, so to speak, being cannibalistic, consuming his children, abusing his children. And, you know, with the Trinity test in real life, eventually this is exported. But internally, it does destroy some of the children here, right? The people we talked about in the surrounding communities. So I think you can extend the father monster in the house to domestic affairs and foreign affairs, but always, you know, like a good Aristotelian. Sometimes I feel like Lynch has those moments. You know, the household is the heart of the polis. The household is the heart of the political community. The rot is there. Now, I referred to the Trinity test multiple times by now. This is where we basically test ran the nuclear bomb. And what Lynch does is, when he does the return, he has this be how the entity Bob, the thing that would possess Laura's father, is born. And it's really creepy. If you get a chance, I don't have the time to show it, but if you get a chance, it's like 1.5 minutes. It's black and white, very surreal, kind of like the explosion from the inside. And then you see Bob's horrifying face. He's born of this great technical evil. And I think you get this idea that Bob is a spiritual dominator. You know, whether you're talking about the bomb and Bob, or you're talking about incest and Bob, he's something that does two things. He strikes at the core of its target in a way that obliterates it. You could say it obliterates it in some ways at once, but the other thing about atomic warfare is it obliterates over time. And you never leave being marked by it, which is a lot like sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse, right? So these are things that I kind of noticed in it and that I'm interested in as a political philosopher. And I think that Lynch thinks that noir does a good job of capturing maybe what he wants to say about this type of domination. That's all. That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like I'm not going to be able to give an perfectly accurate answer. I'm still kind of thinking it through, but one thing is, you know, he was in transcendental meditation, so I think that for him that was personally very edifying for dealing with these kinds of themes. And I'd want to know a bit more about how he particularly finds that satisfying. I do think that one of the things that is interesting is, you know, Laura dies, right? But she does not become Bob. She does not become the next carrier of Bob. into the next generation. And in that sense, she breaks the power of Bob. She defies it, when the ones before clearly, the implication is that no one, they have not before, right? They suffer through by him, and then they take him into themselves and become it. And she resists that, even though, you know, she dies, which that's sort of similar to my reading of Blood Meridian and the ending of Blood Meridian with the judge and the kid. And I think Lynch and McCarthy are similar in that maybe they got a little bit of Gnostic stuff going on, and they're like,
Yeah.
you can't overcome this thing and make something good like on the earth, but you can defy it and refuse to let it own you, and you can remain free of it, and in that sense you can have a victory.